His life program will be up and underway. And I'm going to read to us from Matthew chapter 5. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But Jesus says, I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and then remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly, I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. We're in this series called Faith-Filled Ways, looking at the famous teaching of Jesus, the Sermon on the Mount. It's his most well-known teaching. And we are looking at this series right from a couple of weeks ago through till the end of November, going through it slowly and intentionally because there is so much in it. And what Jesus is doing in this message, in this communication to people, is what he's doing is going down beneath the surface of our behavior to look at the roots of that behavior, the roots in our internal postures and our relational orientation toward people. This is how I described it to our youngest kids at our All Together. It's like if we look at a person, we can see what they look like, their skin, the outside of them, but inside that person are things that we can't see. If you go down, well, it's probably not the first layer because I missed the first layer of muscle, but then you get to the skeleton. But then beneath the skeleton, you get to the internal organs of that person. There's things that are inside this person you can't see, but Jesus goes a layer deeper than this to something that is not actually seen. And if you open a person, you can't see it, but it's there in every person and you feel it in your body. These are our feelings. This is where Jesus is going in this teaching. He's going down to this bottom level that we all have in us. When you feel certain things, you feel them in your body. They're not always felt in the same place in our body for different people. Different people feel different things in different areas. If you feel anxious, some people will feel it in their stomach. Some people might feel it in their chest. Some people might feel it in their head. Some people might feel it all over. There's no rule to where it is in your body, but it's part of you. It's in you. Jesus is addressing some of these things in this first part of the Sermon on the Mount. And today, he's addressing this external action that is murder and the internal posture or the internal feeling of anger that leads us to an action like this. Here is what Aristotle says about anger. He says, anyone can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy. Anger is one of those really difficult emotions, one of those really tricky things that everybody experiences. Everybody will feel anger. It's one of those basic emotions that we all experience. That's what Aristotle said about it. Here's what Jesus starts as he begins to talk about this. He says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. Jesus here is quoting. He's quoting from the 6th of the 10 commandments. And added on to the end of that commandment, he's quoted a common interpretive tradition. One of the traditions that said Moses gave us the 10 commandments. God gave it through Moses. The command is do not murder. And the interpretation of that is if you do murder, You're going to be liable to judgment. Don't murder or you'll be judged. This is the first of 6 who have heard that it is said, but I say to you, that Jesus is going to give in the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to look at those over the next few weeks. You've heard that he said, but I say to you. He's giving a new interpretive tradition, if you like. He's not reinterpreting the Torah, these commands, by dismissing it, though. He's interpreting it by trying to show us the fuller intent of these commands. He's not trying to raise the bar for us to try harder. Don't just murder. He's not just saying, don't just murder, don't be angry. He's not raising the bar for us. He's not trying to prove that you can't do this. Don't be angry. Oh, you can't? Okay, you need help. He's not doing that. What he's doing is he's showing what it means to be the kind of person in whom God's life will naturally flourish. The Jewish law is seen as this boundary line. Or of a moral code. If you cross this boundary line, then you're in trouble. That's where you'll be judged. But this is an external line that is given to the people of Israel. And what Jesus is doing is he's moving that line from an external line to an internal line. He's looking at the root system of these external boundaries. And the root system of murder, he's suggesting, is anger and contempt. He's not doing this by invalidating the law, saying that the law isn't right when it says do not murder. He's showing that the intention behind saying do not murder isn't the absence of murder alone. The intention of saying do not murder is to see the presence of love and justice. He's showing that the intention of this law isn't just outward compliance, not to murder, but it's inner transformation of the heart, not to hold on to anger, but to live in right relationship with people. So this is where he's kind of going with these, you've heard that it has said, but I say to you. And this is the first one. You've heard that it said, do not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you, that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. He's mapping out here an escalation that happens in the human heart that leads eventually, potentially, to murder. And all of this escalation happens well before murder. But all of this, in this escalation, is also disastrous for human community. You might say murder is disastrous for human community, but so is all of this, Jesus is saying. Here's his escalation. Here's the ramp up. He says, if you're angry, you're liable to judgment. The judgment that he has in mind here is the judgment that happens in Israel. Historically, in Jewish culture, judgment happens here at the city gate. So as you come to the entrance to a city, there's this area where the elders will gather each day and talk about things that are happening in that community, in that city. And people will bring disputes to the elders and say, we've got this problem between us. What should we do? And the elders will discuss it and they'll work it out. If someone is angry with somebody else and the elders see this in the community, they might bring this to as a matter for them to discuss together. We know these people are against each other. We need to work out what to do to make sure this is right, to make sure this anger doesn't go anywhere else. Jesus is saying, I think, in this line, he's saying, judgment happens well before murder. If you're angry with your brother, you'll be judged. That judgment happens at the city gate where they'll work out who's in the right, who's in the wrong, who's to blame here, how do we figure this out? That's a type of judgment that happens well before murder. If you're angry, there's judgment. The community around you don't wait till you murder someone. So he says, Don't think just in terms of judgment and murder. Where there's anger in a community, we need to resolve it. And a good community will know how to do that. Then he says, anyone who insults his brother will be liable to counsel. The next escalation. The word here is literally raka. It's a Jewish insult of somebody. It's like saying to someone, you're not actually worthy of a proper insult. You're beneath me. I think you're a worthless person. And the council that this is brought to is the highest Jewish court. It's called the Sanhedrin. And they talk about matters that are very critical to the society operating properly. This is brought to this court because calling someone a name like this is defamation of that person. It's a public shaming of them. It's a dishonoring of them as a person. And so the Jewish people saw this as a very critical matter. If you're calling people names, you're accusing them in these ways, then this has to be dealt with. This is the next escalation. And then the third escalation, Jesus says, whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. You fool is this next level condemnation. This is not just holding someone with contempt, it's condemnation of them as a person. Saying, you do not even deserve to be here. I wish you weren't alive. It's a judgment of them as a person, as a whole. And Jesus says, you are liable to, in most translations, it says you are liable to the hell of fire or the fire of hell. The word that it uses there is Gehenna. When Jesus names Gehenna, this, for a first century Jew, says something in their mind. And we have to understand this as we're reading this text. This takes the Jewish people somewhere back in their history, back to about the 7th century BC, where in this valley just outside the walls of Jerusalem, the valley of the son of Hinnom, which in Greek is called Gehenna. It's a translation of the Hebrew valley of the son of Hinnom. The Jewish people were involved in the practices of the nations around them, in idolatry, in injustice, and in child sacrifice. God speaks out against this horrendous stuff that is happening. There is the valley of the son of Hinnom in present day. In this place, they would sacrifice their children to the gods Baal and Molech. And in the times of the king of Ahaz, the king of, at the time, he was the king of Israel. There was king of Israel and Judah, or he was the king of Judah. Can't remember, you can look it up. He himself took part in this sacrifice, sacrificing his own children in the fires of the valley of the son of Hinnom. His grandson continued this practice. His family line continued this practice right down until Josiah, one of the kings, 100 years later, that says, this is horrendous. We're not doing this. What is this about? And God at that time, through the prophet Jeremiah, says this. He says, they have built the high places of Topheth. That's the area, the altar to these gods, Molech and Baal, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, the Hebrew name for this valley, in Greek, Gehenna, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it come into my mind. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when it will no more be called Topheth, or the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. For they will bury in Topheth because there is no room elsewhere. God is expressing here the horror of what Israel had become. An emotional protest at this type of action. He's saying, I couldn't have even imagined this myself. And what you're doing here, this will be judged. This is ending in disaster. And so in Jesus' day, when you say Gehenna, they have a real place in their mind and real historical events that impacted their nation. It's associated with the horrors of their past. And it stirred terror in the people. It's a place associated with child sacrifice by their ancestors and God's judgment on that kind of injustice. And so by the time of Jesus, this has become a symbol of what happens in human communities when there's this collapse into cycles of contempt for other people, thinking other people are worthless, being willing even to sacrifice your own child. That's what you think of your child. It leads to complete ruin. So when we read this text, it's important for us, I think, not to think that Jesus is here describing hell as a fiery torture chamber and saying that you are going to go there if you cast judgment on somebody else. Do you see that that's not what he's saying? That's not what he's talking about here. What he's doing is awakening the prophetic imagination in the people that are listening. He's using an image of a horror from their past to highlight the seriousness of nurturing contempt for another person because of the danger of recreating this kind of destruction. He's saying that we don't want another Valley of Hinnom. We don't want to go there because that brings God's judgment. God is completely against that. Maybe we could think about it because we don't understand that sense of horror as we think of the Valley of Hinnom. It'd be like saying, we don't want another Auschwitz that invokes God's judgment. It's a place of horror where horrendous things were done. And when someone hates somebody else and treats them in contempt and calls them a fool and worthless and not worth living and not actually human, these are the things that happen. God condemns it outright. And so Jesus is saying, be warned about harboring anger toward another human being. And he's describing here a spiral of relational dehumanization. This internal kind of spiral down of hatred alongside this external spiral up of the consequences of what happens. The internal escalation in hostility and resentment to contempt and dismissive insults to this moral superiority, condemnation of the person. And the external escalation of this, you're liable to the local judgment, to the community to go, hey, this isn't right. What's happening here? To taken to the highest court, the religious court, and beyond that to divine judgment to say, this is horrendous. This is not the way that you think about another person. Jesus is saying there's a small amount of human anger left unchecked and unexamined can become a force of destruction for yourself and for other people. Has anybody ever done renovations here and you've taken off the gyprock off the walls and you've seen that all these walls don't look quite as solid as they should be? This is mum and dad's laundry walls. Took the gyprock off, and what's happened? It's been eaten by termites. You'll see the walls there. You know, termites, they're very, very small creatures, but they eat wood. That's what they look like. They look like a little bit like ants. They're not part of the ant family, apparently. They're part of the cockroach family, discovered. The name comes from the word to rub or to erode or to consume, and they consume the inside of walls, the wood in the walls. What they do is that they go into the frame inside there, behind where you can't see, and they weaken the frame. They work at the structural timber inside the walls, or your floors, or the beams. They work slowly because they're only very small, where they work in a big team, and they work very strategically, actually. What they'll sometimes do is hollow out every second upright so the wall stays intact, because if they don't do that, they're in danger of being killed and losing all their food because the wall's collapsed. It's incredible that the way that they can do this. They avoid detection by eating the inside while the outside looks fine. Even of a beam, they'll eat right down the middle, and you look at it and you kind of go, look, still looks fine, but it's completely hollowed out. They rely on working in the dark where they can't be seen. They rely on it being wet in there, thrive in hidden and neglected places. What they do is they weaken integrity, not by being this chaotic, loud thing, but through this quiet, patterned erosion. This is what anger is. This is what anger does in us. Anger is the termite of the soul. Ignored or left alone, it consumes a person. It targets our inner structures, our values, our trust in people, our sense of peace within ourselves, our ability to connect with others. It hollows out parts of us in the way that we act towards people in kindness or patience or having proper perspective. It hollows out our own health, our own self-confidence, or our own sense of worth. It leaves this outer shell intact. We can look completely fine on the outside, act normally when we're out with people, continue to operate in the way that everyone thinks everything's all right with you, but you snap. Or you have to dumb everything down, shut everything down inside, or you feel numb actually because there's just this seething. Maybe you numb yourself with things that help you to feel okay. Anger feeds in the dark. It feeds in these secret places. You can't let it out. It feeds in these areas that are neglected, that we won't actually look at. What we denied, or places of grief that we haven't given ourselves permission to grieve for whatever reason. It feeds in areas that we're ashamed of. Well, I shouldn't feel that. I can't feel that. And what it can eventually do is collapse us as people because we're hollowed out shells, eaten away. Some of us, as I describe this, going, yeah, I see where this happens for me. Some of you have someone in mind who is in one of these categories in terms of anger towards them we've talked about. And you're seeing where it's starting to eat away at you. As you notice this, you must be careful not to hold this information against yourself, to judge yourself for feeling this. You feel angry because it's a normal, God-given human emotion. And you're not told not to be angry. Jesus is saying, be careful with this anger. It's dangerous. So treat it gently. Acknowledge it. And what to do with it, we're going to come to in a minute. Jesus here is focusing on a person who is angry and the external escalation and consequences of what happens alongside this internal churning and escalation. It's interesting that at the beginning of this Sermon on the Mount, he's just done his introduction, and this is the first thing Jesus talks about, anger. It's interesting it's the first thing. I think there's maybe a few reasons for that. Well, number one, it's something that everybody feels. So if you feel angry, then you're normal. If you say you don't feel angry, then it's probably because you haven't allowed yourself to. There are things that will have angered you. Everybody, I would say it's a universal emotion, negative emotion, and we avoid it because it's negative. Maybe because it's so common. Or maybe it's because what Jesus is doing here when he's talking about, you've heard that it's said, but I say to you, is he's starting through the second half of the 10 Commandments. Anger being the 6th. Next, he's going to go to lust. Do not commit adultery being the 7th. Do not covet your neighbour's wife. He's going to go through the final of the 10 Commandments in these, you've heard that it's said, but now I say to you. But there's also another thing that I can see Jesus doing here, because what he's doing is he's starting right back at the beginning of the story. He's given the introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. What's the first story after Adam and Eve in the garden? Is the story of their children, Cain and Abel. It's a story of anger. This is how it goes. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. Brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and of their fat portions. And had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain's offering, he had no regard. Here's my question for you. How do you think Cain might feel? As you look at what Cain has done and you look at what Abel has done, how do you think Cain might feel? He's the one working in the field and he's like, I'm going to bring an offering to God of what the ground has produced because I want to thank him. And Abel says, I'm going to kill the firstborn of my fattened calves, and I'm going to bring that as an offering to the Lord. 2 brothers bringing their offerings to God. God says, what you brought, Abel, is wonderful. Thank you. I received that. He says to Cain, no, not good enough. How do you feel? You feel confused? You feel angry? This is unfair. What have I done differently to my brother? Why are you saying that I'm not good enough, but he's fine? I've done everything that I've been asked to do, haven't I? I don't understand. He feels angry. This is what we're told he feels. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell, despondent. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, and you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Jesus is going back to this first story and saying, you've heard this said, don't murder. I'm saying to you, don't be angry with your brother. The thing that I want us to notice in this text is what God says to Cain. He says, why are you angry and why has your face fallen? I wonder how you read that. A lot of us, I think, would probably read it in a way God's saying, you shouldn't be angry. Stop being angry. What are you angry about? You got no reason to be angry. I can accept his, but not yours. You got no right to question me on that. Some of us have that view of what God is doing here. Let me offer a different reading. What if God is saying to Cain, why are you angry? What's beneath that anger for you? Tell me about what's happening for you that you feel angry. Tell me what you don't understand about what's happened. Let's talk through the reasons that you're feeling this. And I wonder if Cain had been able to see God in that way, then he might have been able to process what he felt differently. We're not given the reasons why God said no to Cain's offering and yes to Abel's. All we see is these interactions. Jesus, I think, is picking up on these stories for us to wrestle with them, to think about them. What is happening here? And then Jesus takes the application of this escalation of anger in a different direction. Because this is what Jesus says, which I think closely connects it with Cain and Abel, as well as the worship in Jeremiah's time. He says this, so if you are offering your gift at the altar, who's been offering their gift at the altar? Cain and Abel have. The people in Jeremiah's day have. If you are offering your gift at the altar, and remember there that your brother has something against you, to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you'll never get out until you've paid the last penny. Many read this, I think, if you just do a cursory reading of this, you might read this as, if you're the angry person who is angry with someone else and you're coming to worship, go and sort out your anger first. That is not what Jesus said. This is what Jesus said. If you're the one coming to worship and you remember someone's angry with you, you go. Don't wait till they come with you. Don't say, they're angry and that's their problem. He says, you go. He's saying here both parties have a responsibility in a rupture, even if only one of them is angry. He says to this person, first be reconciled. He's saying God is more interested in you having right relationships with others than he is in your coming to worship in community. What do we do with that? He used a legal metaphor to say, deal with broken relationships now before things escalate and you're taken to court and handed over to judgment. On the one hand, he said, being angry with someone makes you liable to judgment. If you're angry, people are going to look at this and go, what's happened here? We need to make a judgment between who's in the right and who's in the wrong. But on the other hand, he's saying beware, because someone being angry at you may indicate that you are, in fact, the one who has done something wrong towards them, even if you can't admit it. The problem for most of us is that we kind of like to ignore it when someone's angry with us because we don't like people being angry with us. We don't know what to do if someone's angry with us. Am I supposed to go and talk to them, but they'll be angry at me? So how do I do that? So we tend not to do very much at all. Just let them be angry. What's harder to do, knowing what to do when you're angry or knowing what to do when someone's angry with you? They both put us in a bit of a bind, don't they? We have all sorts of responses when people are angry with us. I don't know how you feel when someone's angry with you. Could be anything from all the emojis. You yourself might feel angry. You might be completely confused. You might be scared of this person. You maybe just like, this person's always angry at me, I'm bored of this. Maybe you're like, this is exhausting. Maybe you're annoyed because there's things that you're not happy with either, but you're holding yourself together. Or maybe there's just write this person off. You feel contempt for that person. Maybe some of us have people in mind now who are angry at us, and maybe it's been years that they've been angry at us and we just don't know what to do. The first thing is to acknowledge and process this emotion that you're feeling with someone angry at you. It's only when you're processing your emotion that you're going to be able to respond with wisdom. Jesus is not making a new rule here. This isn't about doing this set of things that he's told you to do. I don't believe he's saying don't come to worship if people are angry with you. What he's doing in these instructions is he's forming a community where everyone is alert to a relational rupture. And every person takes responsibility when they become aware of it, whether they feel wronged or are being accused of having done something wrong to another. This is the internal righteousness that surpasses the external righteousness of the Pharisees. It's not just not murdering and not being angry, but it's becoming people who notice pain in other people and refuse to justify their own offences. It's people who humble themselves and really actually listen to another person and try to understand what they're trying to communicate. Offer their apology for their part in the breakdown. It's people who let reconciliation interrupt even the things they think are really more important to do. I say this and I acknowledge and recognize there are situations where we still won't know what to do. It's like stuck, impossible. Where it feels impossible, absolutely. The situation is very complex, where it was very unclear. There's situations where it may not be possible because someone's unwilling, because it's unsafe to do it. I've been in situations myself where I've tried to reconcile with someone and my attempt at reconciliation sparks anger back at me from the other, and it turns out seemingly worse. There are situations where it's not wise to approach the other person. Moving into a situation where there's ongoing abuse, it'd be an unwise thing to do. Or where there are power imbalances that distort the outcomes. Or maybe you're just not in a place where you're able to face the other person. You need to process your own emotion first before you can act with wisdom. Discerning the wise action, I think, is what Jesus is driving at through this. This is what God wants to teach us, not to make rules for us to have to follow again. Like termites in the wall, unresolved anger hollows out our inner frame. Every second beam of our compassion or our trust or our peace is eaten. Outside we look fine, holding it together, but inside we're brittle, we're weak. So question is, how might we, and let me finish with these thoughts, how might we approach this? Whatever side of the anger we're on, whether we're the person who's angry or the one that has seemingly caused offence. I'm suggesting here a pathway, and I know this is simplistic, but it might just give you a framework, excuse the pun, for approaching it. Anger or angry at someone, the process could be the same. Treat the infestation, slow resolution. Honest examination. If you're going to repair what termites have eaten, you have to take the gyprock off the walls. You don't just pretend that the wall's fine and leave them. You take the gyprock off the walls and see what's hidden. It's a very vulnerable thing for us to do. But to be healed, the thing that lies behind the wall must be seen. And I say that in an actual, it needs to be seen by somebody else. Not by the person who's angry or angry at, but you need someone to be able to see what you feel, another person. If you're angry, honest examination might be asking, why am I angry? Can I articulate this really clearly? Can you name it? Is it resentment or bitterness or irritability? Have you become passive aggressive? And then what's beneath this anger? Why? Like, what is this anger? What started this anger? Is it neglect, a betrayal, a humiliation, a fear, a grief? There could be many different things that led to you feeling angry. Let a trusted person help you open the wall. A friend, a mentor, a counselor, a psychologist. a spiritual guide, someone you trust needs to be there to help you to open this. But if you're seeking reconciliation, what it might mean to honestly examine would be for you to face the reality that someone has something against you for something you've done to them. Even if you've done something unintentionally, even if you don't even think you've done anything, face the reality that someone's got something against you. And then look at your own reaction to that. Ask, why do I react defensively to this? Why do I deny that I've done anything at all? Why do I feel anxious when I think of that? Why do I feel angry? Whatever it is for you, face those things. An honest examination. Refuse a surface level spirituality to cover relational damage. Second, treat the infestation. You need to trace to the root issue and remove it gently. We don't get a sledgehammer to take down this wall. We have to find if the termites are still active and remove them, killing them. Or we need to begin to remove the beams that are affected. Relationship damage is very rarely caused by a single event, but like termites, it's slow. There's hidden patterns that do the deep damage. If you're angry with someone, what would it mean for you to treat the infestation? It would mean the anger being understood and then transformed. Not suppressed or not just expressed, but understood, which may involve grieving something you've lost. It may mean naming and confronting the wrongs that have been done against you, practicing forgiveness. Maybe beneath these long-term patterns of rage, you might see bitterness or pride or shame or sorrow, things that lie beneath this anger. You need to treat these. If you're seeking reconciliation, what might it mean to treat this infestation? It might mean going to the other person and owning whatever small part you can. Even if their anger seems disproportionate, owning your little part in it. And seek to repair trust. It's not a shallow apology. It's seeking to recognize where you've been careless or used harsh words or neglected or you've been self-righteous. Even if you don't feel angry, being able to do this, to work on some of this tension. Honest examination, treat the infestation, slow restoration. This is about repairing, replacing the structures that have been eaten away. You've got to go and you've got to take the stuff out. You've got to go and buy the materials, which is costly. You've then got to measure it all up. You've got to cut it all right. You've got to put them in beam by beam and rebuild this wall. Healing takes time. Rebuilding trust is a very slow thing to do. The wall may look the same in the end. You might get and build this wall, but in this building intentionally happens, the wall will just be the same as it was. You don't want to just cover it over again and say, I've gone and apologized, just put the gyprock back on. This is slow, long, hard work. There's a little offering for you. It is simplistic, I realize. This is a very, very difficult area. So if you're angry at me for what I've simplified, come and talk to me about it. Jesus is remarkable, isn't he? What he does to open up these things for us. And he lives this out so we can see it. Jesus had lots of people who were angry at him. Jesus is very angry at things that are happening in the world. And we see in our meal of communion, that's what he calls us to remember, the way that he approaches this. And so this is what we want to do. We want to come to Jesus and say, I need help. Give me what you have. Help me to learn from you. This is difficult and painful work. And so I remember you as I practice this. So we're going to go and do this now. I invite you to come and collect one of these from the table. Sam's going to play some music. Do you want to play it while we take communion, or do you want to? Yeah. Have you got a song for us, or no song for us? That's all right. Why don't we have 1 minute? No, we don't need music. Let's just be still. Come and get these, and we will take these all together. So take it back to your seat.